It's been a year.
Yes.
Just talk to us a little bit about how you feel and just leading to the 1 year. What's it been like for you?
It's gone by in a flash. I still feel great though. I love coming in every single day. We have an awesome team here at the Sheriff's Office, 800 employees. And, I joke all the time. I tell people, I'm living my dream. If I'm sleeping, don't wake me up because I'm having the best dream of my life, because you can just make such a difference. It's such a different position than being chief of police. As a sheriff, you're a constitutional office. So you don't have a board you answer to. You're the ultimate decision maker. You answer to the citizens of St. Lucie County. So each and every single day, I'm making decisions that are going to hopefully help achieve our vision, becoming the safest county in the state of Florida, and just being that premier law enforcement agency, not only in Florida, the Treasure Coast, but the entire United States. So it's a challenge, but it's definitely a community worth fighting for, and the hard work, it's all worth it. And I'm just very blessed to be in this position. I really still can't believe it sometimes.
Before we talk about your vision and what you hope to see with your deputies and utilizing all these tools, let's talk about what you have right now and how you kind of keep up with the growing population, specifically here in St. Lucie County.
Well, there's no maintaining in life. You're either getting better or you're getting worse, and we believe that here. We run this as a business, and if you're not changing the business, you're going to be out of business. And when I first took over, the previous sheriff, like I said before, brought me on as the undersheriff for a couple months to allow me to do the transition. During that time, I did a complete assessment of the organization, kind of what we needed to basically achieve our vision. And we implemented a strategic reorganization January 7th, right at midnight when I got sworn in. That email went out. It was an 18-page document detailing how we were going to restructure this agency to meet the needs of this community. Over the last 40 years, and the last really 2 sheriffs that were in office during that time, one for 16 years, the other one for 24 years, basically the agency hadn't changed much from a structural standpoint. And I just felt it needed to be changed. You have to do more with less. I mean, law enforcement is a very, very expensive. If you look at, first responders, whether it's fire or law enforcement, that's usually the biggest piece of any municipal government's budget. And it's no different here in St. Lucie County. So we have to be, we ran on a platform of running a fiscally transparent, responsible budget. And, I wanted to make sure that they knew I meant business day one coming in here. And we've just been off to the races since then, doing a lot of changes here in the organization. Some things have gone very well. Some things I have to go back to the drawing board a little bit on. But we are doing more with less, and we're going to have to do that as we move forward to be as efficient as we can.
Do you think that your sheriff's deputies are prepared for the growing boom that we are seeing here?
So I think so. I think they're excited about it because it creates a lot more opportunities for them. As we grow as an agency, we have different units, we have different opportunities for them. Our agency is 120 years in existence. It started in 1905. So it has a very rich history, but that's gone with a lot of changes. This was a very rural area back in the day in 1905. Probably in the mid-'80s, it started changing when we started seeing that growth, especially in the south end of the county. Port St. Lucie really kind of came on the scene in the early to late 90s as the fastest growing city, in the country. And, our county is just growing leaps and bounds now. They're estimating this population to be close to 500,000 residents by 2040. I mean, that's in a blink of an eye. That's going to be here. So our deputies are very excited for it. I'm very excited for it. I'm very excited to put the experience I have dealing with growth to use. I spent 26 years at the city of Port St. Lucie. Saw that go from 75,000 residents to 270,000 residents, when I left and I retired. And we did some unbelievable things down there and produced some unbelievable results, being the safest large city in the state of Florida, doing it with 1.2 officers per 1,000. Nobody did more with less with that. So I have, I believe, unmatched experience dealing with growth, being as efficient, as effective as we can as a law enforcement agency. And I think that was some of the reasons why I got elected, because of that experience. And our deputies are definitely going to see the dividends from that pay off in the future.
I love how optimistic you are.
I'm very optimistic, yeah.
But there's got to be some concerns. Sheriff, do you hear from your deputies who may be perhaps struggling to even communicate with someone who they stop that are not from here originally?
Sure.
Language barriers. Like, how do you keep up with the folks who are not from here originally?
So we are becoming a much more diverse community. But again, when I came here, this was a bedroom retirement community, and this was basically farmland here up on the north end of the county. That's changing now. Those farmlands are being sold off, those ranches. It's going to be a lot of development. But we keep up with that by, number one, hiring to basically match our community. We're becoming a much more diverse agency as we move forward, focusing our recruiting efforts on those things. We want to have a diverse agency, but we also provide our deputies with world-class training. We want to have great training to give them the tools necessary to do their jobs the most effective way. Because at the end of the day, we want them to feel competent. We want them to go home safe at the end of the day. And my job is to get them the tools and the equipment in order to do that.
When you started compared to now and what's to come in 2026, do you feel like you're changing a little bit of the strategy of like perhaps maybe how many patrol units are out in a specific area, because this is a new area with a new neighborhood? How do you go about that and make the decisions?
So that started day one. In patrol especially, we have, 12 zones basically that we patrol. But the deputies were never assigned to those zones on a permanent basis. And so that really goes against a community policing philosophy, because you want your deputies working pretty much every day in the same zone so they get familiar with the businesses, the residents, they understand what the problems are. So we've seen much better ownership and accountability with our deputies working in the same zones each and every single day. There's greater accountability. We have captains now in the north end and the south end of the county. Each region is represented by a captain, and now a deputy chief instead of a captain oversees patrol, whereas before it was a little bit different.
By doing that, how does that help? To have a captain there, like what's the difference between the different?
So, the north end is a very large area, south end is a very large area, and to have one captain over the entire county was just too much to ask for anybody. When we came here, we only had 4 captains for the entire agency, 2 at the jail and 2 in law enforcement. So I'll give you an example. We had a captain that was over training for 800 employees. There were over 70 school resource deputies responsible for close to 50,000 students and staff in our school system. And then they're also responsible for our court security. That's too much to ask anybody. So I've made, I call it the big, beautiful staff. Trump has a big, beautiful bill. I call it the big, beautiful staff. And so all of these divisions now are run by a command level, either civilian or law enforcement officer. It's much better accountability. These things that have not gotten the attention they've needed over the years are getting much better as we focus on continuous improvements, implementing our standards of performance here. So we're just seeing much better results. And I can just tell you in patrol, we had a full-time traffic unit when I took over. I disbanded it. And the reason being was because it was being used as basically a funeral escort service and supplementing private businesses. Everybody's job is traffic enforcement. And with a full-time unit, we were averaging 8,000 citations and warnings over a 5-year period for every year. Wow. Since disbanding that unit, getting patrol completely implemented the way we wanted it, focusing on traffic, we're at over 20,000 citations and warnings for the year, focusing on education and enforcement. I'm very proud of the work they're doing. They are buying into this. I think people initially are a little leery of change. Cops hate the way things are being done, but we also hate change because we like being comfortable, because the first thing you ask is, how does this affect me? But once they see the structure, and once they see the accountability, and accountability is not a bad word, they want to see employees that aren't doing their jobs held accountable, but they also want to be recognized and awarded for doing their jobs, and that's what we do. And so we're making sure that, again, they're getting the support they need to do their jobs. We back them up 100%. But make no mistake, we have a job to do every day, and it's not only having a vision, it's having a process to reach that vision, but being disciplined to do it. And I think we're set up now, to do that in the future.
When a county official makes a decision with a plan to develop, do they ask you for your opinion and how it's going to impact your agency? Are their decision makings based on what you tell them, whether or not you're strained with deputies in this particular parcel of land, let's say? How do they go about that, and do they even ask you?
Well, it was a little different when I was at the city of Port St. Lucie, because I was part of a staff that worked directly with the city council. Here the Board of County Commission gives us the funding we need for our budgets, but we don't work together every single day. So it's really, really important for me to be communicating with them, making sure I'm staying in the loop, staying up with the Board of County Commission meetings, speaking to the county administrator, speaking to all 5 commissioners, seeing what their needs are. They weren't treated very fairly, I think, by past sheriffs here. Sheriffs have a lot of power based on the Florida Constitution, how things are set up. So basically, once they get their budgets, they're pretty much off to the races. They could do whatever they want with that money. They could say they were going to buy 30 patrol cars, but then use the money to do something totally different. It puts our county commissioners in a really tough situation because they're accountable to the taxpayers for the decisions they make on your budgets. So as we move forward, I am trying to over communicate with our county commissioners, making them feel like this is their law enforcement agency. I don't want this place seen as a liability on an accounting sheet, or this is something that's just a cost. I want this to be an asset for them, something they're proud to invest in, where they're seeing the results. And so we have to work strategically. One of the things we are going to have here is a detailed strategic plan, and dealing with growth is just probably priority number one, because it's going to happen very, very fast. I mean, we're getting ready to open, there's talks about the airport starting commercial flights. That's going to take manpower. That's going to take deputies. So we have to be in sync with each other. They have to be included in our strategic plan, because ultimately, if we're operating in silos and doing things, it's just not going to be good for the community of St. Lucie County and for our residents.
How about out in the water? When we went out there with your deputies, they talk about we're seeing more and more people out in the water that they're not used to the laws,
Sure.
and that's kind of a risk. Well, not a risk for them, but they have to be more aware to keep our residents safe when they're out boating. So, anything about that you want to share?
Oh, absolutely. So our boat, look at that area. You went out there. It is absolutely gorgeous, and it draws a lot of tourism into our area. It's a very enjoyable thing for our residents to do, but we have to keep our waterways safe, not only for just the recreational type use, but those are our borders here in Florida. I talked a lot about immigration on my campaign trail, and I had some citizens who were saying, hey, this isn't the southern border, this is just Republican talk, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, we have borders here, the waterways, and we've proven that. I mean, we intercepted a boat from the Bahamas that had 30 Chinese nationals on it. I mean, that are just, it's scary.
Right.
And what's going on that we don't know. So, another thing that we've done since coming here, as part of getting rid of the traffic unit, was moving those positions over into our brand new special investigations division that focuses on narcotics, that focuses on Homeland Security. Homeland Security is a big issue. I knew that was going to be with the immigration, but also working with DEA, the FBI, Homeland Security itself. And so we have task force officers now and deputies on all of those different federal agencies. We get a lot of funding from them. We just got $1 million grant from FDLE. And part of that's going to be protecting our waterways, doing enforcement, and making sure that we're keeping our residents safe.
What would you say to those residents who are so concerned about the new neighborhoods coming in and they don't feel like they are going to be protected by the law enforcement because they don't see a lot of deputies, or they don't feel like they don't have enough deputies here to protect them?
Yeah, well, to them, we are going to be, because how we patrolled a ranch is going to be different than how we patrol 3,000 residences. So they're going to see an increase. We are doing things with technology like drones and different things like that, but it's really important for our residents to know we have a plan in place to deal with the growth, and I have to deliver on that, or I won't be sitting here in 4 years. And so I got to make sure that we got to earn it every single day, getting it out, communicating with our residents. A lot of people are against growth as well. So but some of these land deals, there's certain entitlements that the developers have that the county governments or city governments really can't stop that level of growth from happening, and we're seeing that in the south end of the county. But I know our county's in good hands. I think we're going to have a good plan, and I think they're going to see the results, because I'm already seeing it in 1 year into the job.
How many deputies do you have in the agency right now?
So we have close to 500 deputies within the agency, a little over 500 when you include the jail. I don't differentiate between law enforcement and corrections; they're deputies. So.
Okay.
But
this is including the correctional deputies?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so.
Are you looking for more?
Oh, we are looking for more. We are expanding. And obviously with an agency that's 120 years old, we see constant retirements. I mean, it's the agency I came from before was only 40 years old, so that's like a career. We didn't see a lot of retirements until at the end. But here we see it constantly. So we're always looking for the best and the brightest. We just reached a collective bargaining agreement with our deputies union that raised the salaries, got all of our deputies brought up on par. I'm able to hire people now up to step 5 with experience. That's a game changer for recruitment. That's never been done here before. But working with our employees, working with the unions, it's just been a game changer for us.
I just thought of this. I don't know if I'm going to use it for my story.
Sure.
But we're talking about immigration. The money that you received from the state on being part of the program, what are your plans with that, and what do you look forward to continuing this effort?
So
down immigration.
basically, it's a reimbursement for a lot of things we've done already. Getting our deputies trained as part of the 287G program. We are required to participate in that program.
Yeah.
That's directed right from our governor, and I do support the efforts to crack down on illegal immigration. I don't think we should have open borders, and there's a process in place. If people aren't happy with the process, then we need to change the laws and make the path to citizenship easier. I think we all agree that needs to happen.
Yeah.
But we're looking at people that everyone thinks we're out here just going door to door, and we're not doing that. That's total. You got to be careful what you hear, on social media. It's very disturbing for a lot of people. We're looking at people that obviously have criminal records, people that have committed crimes, and people that have gone through the process and been told by a court, you are to leave the country, and they're refusing to do so. And that could have been for decades or more. But there was just no enforcement element. Now that's changed a little bit. So the money that we're getting from the state is basically going to be used towards our infrastructure analysis, our real-time crime center. A lot of people use that term a little loosely, what that looks like. I mean, we have a plan for it, how we want to use it here. But immigration, I just want people to understand, because we have a growing, community here.
Different communities.
Different backgrounds. Yes, and it's not just a predominantly white community anymore. So we want to make sure that we're communicating with them, alleviating those fears. But I'm married to an immigrant. I've told people this before. My wife came from Argentina. She was separated from her father for 5 years. He came here on a visa and was able to bring the family over. They eventually achieved citizenship, which was very difficult to do, even though my wife grew up here and spoke perfect English. I mean, it's a very intimidating process. So I do, sympathize with people and what they're dealing with. But we're going to treat people with the utmost respect and dignity through this process, and we're going to make sure we're following the law and make sure people's rights are protected.
I feel like I don't want to miss out on anything.
Sure.
We talked about the AEDs and the patrol cars. We talked about drones, how you're utilizing them, and it's really making a difference in responding to a call. But is there anything else that you want to share that hasn't been put out there? I mean, you mentioned the Real-Time Crime Center.
Sure.
I know that hasn't really been unveiled yet, or you're still working, but is there anything else you want us to share to show our community members that you guys are obviously on the right path? It sounds like it. You're very confident about it. And just making sure that you guys are staying up to date and keeping them safe. Yeah,
one of the things we did here was increase our capacity in crime analysis and intelligence gathering. And so we have a world-class team that is working hard each and every single day. We're a very data-driven organization. We don't make decisions just from a whim thinking, this is what we want to do today. We look at what the costs for service are, how to reduce repeat calls for service, how to reduce crime, where's that crime happening, mapping it out, leveraging all the technology we can to, again, be as effective as possible and bring that crime level down. It's only going to happen if you have a process. But we got to be disciplined to execute that process. We have to work with the two other agencies, City of Port St. Lucie, the City of Fort Pierce. They're going through a change right now, looking for a new chief of police. I look forward to working with that person to see how I can serve them, to see how I can serve the City of Port St. Lucie. All of us work together for the same goal. If nobody cares who gets the credit, the sky's the limit. And one thing I'm very proud of, probably one of the most things I'm proud of, is we recently started a St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office foundation. And it's a 501c3. We get donations all the time for things like K9. They want to support law enforcement, and that gives people a way to donate and have a tax write-off. But we're also going to be raising money to help out this community. We raised $1 million in my campaign, and if we can do something for something as silly as a political campaign, raise $1 million, we could do that for the betterment of this community and really be that force multiplier and work with groups like the Boys and Girls Club, Graceway Village, where we see problems, kids that are at risk or kids that need us most, or dealing with the homeless situation, where it's not all relying on tax dollars. This is a community working together. And one thing people don't realize about St. Lucie County, this is one of the most giving counties I've ever seen. When there's a problem, people open up their wallets and they want to help solve that problem. When we needed school resource deputies, they voted in that extra tax to do that because they believe in the cause. So as long as they see that we're out here doing the right things and we're serving people, and that's really what our purpose is. I tell our guys all the time, we don't exist just to exist. We exist for a purpose, which is to serve people and help them be the very best they can be. And I'm super optimistic. I'm super excited about it, and I just feel like the best is really yet to come here.
I have just a few more.
No,
I'm
go
so
ahead.
sorry. It's taking longer than I
No,
thought.
it's
But I
good.
just want to make sure.
Talk
What are-
all day.
What are the highest calls of, or I guess the biggest crime trends that you're seeing? What has been the most, I guess, challenging? Is it
Yeah.
narcotics? Is it?
No, so
homicides?
the biggest crimes we're seeing a big decrease in property related crimes. We're seeing a big uptick in economic type crimes, cyber crimes, different things like that. So we're going to be having to shift our focus a little bit and our manpower towards dealing with those things. And we're dealing with frauds, almost identity theft, thefts from banks, people falling for scams all the time, and so that's really a growing issue. Obviously, domestic violence, being in a residential type of community with 390,000 residents, is always an issue for us. So we're looking at ways to reduce those types of crimes. Are we having repeat calls at those residences? How can we, provide some intervention, be more proactive? But property crimes, believe it or not, are down. I think we're going to see a little bit of an uptick this year in just our crime stats overall, because we went to a new system and how to report that. You have the NIBRS, which is National Incident-Based Incident Reporting, and FIBRS, which is Florida. So it's different than just the old FDLE numbers that we used to do, type Part 1 and Type 2 type crimes. So this year is going to be kind of a baseline, and then next year we're going to see how it compares, because we'll have the data collection will be the same for both years. This year we're comparing it to the old FDLE stats. It's a little bit different. And we're taking more reports now. I mean, the accountability level is just risen up a little bit. What used to not maybe reported and was acceptable in this culture is not anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of people don't like to admit this. So coming
Yes.
forward, that's hard. So those numbers might be. There may be some numbers that are underreported that are not there.
I'm sure, and that happens in law enforcement all the time, but the bottom line is the law says if someone's reporting a crime,
Yeah.
you're supposed to document that and determine whether it's founded, unfounded, and things like that. So we have an obligation to do the right thing. So we have to train our deputies on what the expectations are. I don't want to hear, well, we've always done it this way in the past. I mean, that's not acceptable anymore. It's a new day at the sheriff's office, and this is the way we're doing business.
Are there any particular residential areas that you have your deputies patrolling of a concern right now?
I think every area is important. Every area deserves, whether it's, we have some areas that are, there's generational poverty. We have some very high-end areas. All those areas deserve the same level of protection and service. That's why we have that zone-based model where the deputies are working in those areas. They understand. We are having some issues at some of the parks regarding solicitation for prostitution, different things like that. I want our parks to be safe, zero tolerance, and so we're working on those things as they come up and pop up on our radar.
Something that I noticed during a ride along, nothing that the deputy told me, so don't get mad at her.
No,
but I
she's
just
great.
noticed that when we were going around, I didn't really see much of another sheriff's patrol unit around. She was showing me the route that she takes, and it seems like a lot of land.
It's a lot of land, yes.
So how do you make sure that your deputies, the workload isn't, impacting them?
Yeah, well, we could have 100 deputies on the road, and that would be, not enough, or we can have one, and it's too many some days. Just depends on the call volume. But, we are going to have to go back and look at our zones. They haven't changed really in the last 40, 50 years. The only thing that's changed is now they're working in that zone every single day on a consistent basis. But we're going to have to carve up some of these zones, add more deputies to patrol. Patrol is the base, the foundation of the agency in terms of the law enforcement service we provide. But a sheriff's office is so different than many law enforcement agencies. We provide jail services, court services, SRD services. So it's not just patrol and investigations like I was used to before. It's a much different type of an agency. But we are going to have to be data driven. We're going to have to look at, hey, is one zone being overrun with too many calls? Do we have to break that up? And so those are some of the data-driven decisions, like I talked about before, that we're going to have to do. That's why it's so important to have that analysis capacity for them to do that.
Is there anything else I failed to ask that you want to add about growing population, your deputies out there, enhancement in keeping data in a different way that your department hasn't seen before? But is there anything else that you want your residents to know that I didn't ask?
No, I just think the biggest thing I want our residents to know is, we have a very high standard here, and, it starts at the top of the organization, but we're focusing on continuous improvements every single day. And we have to look at how we're doing things. We can't stand for the status quo. And I just want them to know they have a sheriff and they have a staff here and the deputies that are committed to one thing, and it's making this the safest county in the state of Florida. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of effort, but it's going to pay off for everybody. And we're going to just be continuing to live in a great community and really just taking this to the next level. I'm super excited about it. I'm honored to have, the privilege to be in this position. It's not something that, I take for granted or I feel entitled to. Like I said, you got to earn it every single day. Intend to do that and just be an example for the other deputies here that we're just here to serve. And this is their law enforcement agency. I want this community to be proud of this law enforcement agency and the service we're providing.
I think I'm good. I just have one more question up to you to answer.
Yeah.
With the tragedy that happened here in our neighboring agency, do you want to share anything of your thoughts or how your deputies are handling that? I'm sure it's really impacting that.
It's been a long year for us here, and from a lot of changes, not only in the organization, but we lost a deputy too a month ago. Deputy Corporal Chris Mock, died of a heart attack. And so our deputies, we're human beings. I tell people that all the time. And so, we're really trying to work on personnel wellness here and making sure that they get the time off they need. With what happened after, Chris passed away to what happened now with the Indian River County deputy that passed away. I decided to add 3 holidays to match what the state's doing here, to give them a little bit more time off, enjoy with their families. But it's just a reminder that how dangerous this job is. And, there's, we like to call, calls for service routine. There's nothing routine. We have to try to learn something from this and take something positive from it, because that's what, how we honor her legacy and her service of 25 years to this community. And so my heart just breaks for Sheriff Flowers and his team. When I was down in Broward County with Chris when he was at the hospital in Weston and Cleveland Clinic, the Broward County Sheriff's Office just rolled out the red carpet for us. It was first class. We got an escort all the way back here on the turnpike. And so, we wanted to make sure we were returning the favor. There's only 67 sheriffs in the state of Florida. We all stick together when it comes to, we don't always agree on everything in terms of how we're doing business, but we stick together when one of them's hurting, we're all hurting, and we're going to be there for them. And I'm very proud of the fact that everyone here stepped up, whether it was an escort, security at the hospital, helping with the crime scene. There's no borders when it comes to just working together for the greater good of this community. And so my heart goes out to them, but it's really just a sad way to end the year. But I think we're going to learn something from it. We're going to be better for it. And that's how you truly honor, someone who made the ultimate sacrifice.
Thank you.
Thank you.